All right, guys, so the Pythagorean Theorem, super hard to say, but that's our next topic. It still has to do with triangles and angles and all this good stuff, and I'll put up a video that explains this a little bit better also. The Pythagorean Theorem describes the relationship between the lengths of the legs of the hypotenuse for any right triangle. In a right triangle, the square of the length of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs. You can use this theorem to find the length of a side of a right triangle if the lengths of the other two sides are known. So you're proving that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So when these two things have the same number, then we have a right triangle. If they're not the same, then they're not a right triangle. A is always going to be a leg, B is always a leg, and C, that's the most important one to remember. That's your hypotenuse. That's the one that is always opposite the right angle. Okay? So in example 1, we've got A, we've got B, and we've got C that we're missing. So we plug those numbers into that formula, A squared plus B squared. So 24 squared plus 32 squared equals C squared. And then the last step, we find that square root. So remember, to get your square root on the calculator, it's that blue button, and then x2. So that's how you get your square root. If we're missing a leg, so we've got A, we've got B, and we've got C, you're always going to subtract. If you're missing one of the legs, you're going to be subtracting. So that's what we did here. So we've got 15 squared plus B squared equals 20 squared. So we had to subtract 225 from each side. We get 175, and we find the square root of that. Okay, so some exercises we can do together. So 4 can be A, this can be B, and we know this is C. It's always across from the right angle. And it doesn't matter which one is A and which one is B. So we can write our formula down. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So I'm going to plug in this formula. So 4 squared plus 5 squared equals something squared. And you can plug those in the calculator together. So 4 squared plus 5 squared all at once. So let's see, 4 squared plus 5 squared is 41. But that's not my side length of C. That's C squared. That's whatever C is squared. So what I have to do is I have to find the square root of that, which is going to be about 6.4. So that's my side length of C, 6.4 feet. Number 2, again, I'm going to label my sides. I got A, I got B, I got C. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Use this formula every time. If you write it down and then plug your numbers in, it really helps because then you can see what you need to do. So 5 squared plus 9 squared equals C squared. So 5 squared plus 9 squared is 106. But we're not done. I gotta take the square root of that. And that'll be C. And that's gonna be 10.3. So 10.3 meters. Okay, number 3, this is where it gets tricky. So we've got, we'll say this is A, we'll say this is B. Those don't really matter as long as we know that this is C. So same thing, I'm going to write that formula down. A squared plus B squared equals C squared, and I'm going to plug in what I know. This is why, if you write that formula down every single time, it'll help you. So, oh, they said this was A, so we'll say this is B. So A squared, we don't know. Then I'm going to plug in 15 for B, so plus 15 squared equals 25 squared. So I know 25 squared is 625. I know 15 squared is 225. And I'm still looking for A. So then we can just solve it like you would solve a one-step equation. So subtract 225, because my goal is to get this by itself. Okay, so that gives me 400. And I've got A squared, but I'm looking for A. So I've got to take the square root of that, which would be 20. So A equals 20. And one thing you can do too in the calculator, you can just say, since you can type it all in, you could do 25 squared minus 15 squared. You can do that all in the calculator. Or if you feel more comfortable solving it and then subtracting this way, that works too. Let's see, number 4. So A, we can draw triangles if we need to, but they're giving us A and they're giving us B. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I know A is 7, B is 12, and I'm looking for the angle of C. So 7 squared plus 12 squared is 193 all together. But to find C, I've got to find the square root of that. So square root of 193 is 13.9. So 13.9 kilometers. Then number 5, they give us A and they give us C. So with my formula, I can plug in 10 for A. I'm looking for B, and they gave me C. So let's see, 10 squared is 100 plus B squared equals 625. So we can subtract that 100, get rid of it. 525 is B squared. So we'll take that square root. So the square root of 525, 22.9. So that's my length for B, 22.9 yards. Okay, last one. They gave us the side for B and they gave us our hypotenuse. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I don't know A, that's what I'm looking for. B is 14 and C is 20. So I'm just going to take, in the calculator, I'm going to type in 20 squared minus 14 squared. And that gives me 204. And then I'm going to say the square root of 204. And that's about 14.3. Okay. One more thing. On your homework page, it will say something like, it'll give you the measurements for A. Say A is 3, B is 4, and C is 5. And it'll ask you, is this a right triangle? So the point of the whole Pythagorean theorem is to see if A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared, if we get the same number. So say I take 3 squared and I add 4 squared. And it should equal 5 squared. So 3 squared, which would be 9, plus 16, does it equal 25? Well, yes, it does. So in that case, my answer would be yes, that is a right triangle. If they give you, let's see, I'm going to see one on y'all's work page. So on the worksheet, one of them is 18 feet, 23 feet, and 29 feet. So it just gives you these measurements. It doesn't say which one is A, which one's B, which one's C. But use some common knowledge. The longer side should be your C. And remember, A and B doesn't really matter. Okay? So if we plug these in, let's say 18 squared plus 23 squared should equal 29 squared. So plug these guys in. Let's say 18 squared plus 23 squared gives us 853. So then let's plug in 29 squared. Ooh, 841. So we don't get the same numbers, so we can say no, not a right triangle. Alrighty. Yay.